Star Wars fans are ruining Star Wars. And I'm not talking about you or me. I'm talking about the new generation of filmmakers who have been taking over the series, who care more about source material than they do about storytelling.
I love the lightsaber fight with Darth Maul, not because it's a lightsaber fight, but because George is so good at crafting why that fight's important every time.
I have a ton of respect for Dave Filoni's work. However, whenever he speaks, it's mainly on source material.
His technique and Ahsoka's technique should be very different. And technically, she's had vastly more training than he ever has. She's actually his senior, which is, I think, difficult for people to remember because of when these characters were created, right?
And that's great for me and other hardcore Star Wars fans. However, it's the equivalent of reading a history book, that to a actual storybook. When we compare George Lucas and Dave Filoni, we see a difference in priority.
The episodes we did, if you ask my favorite, were the ones that were the least like any of the movies, because that's when we were actually being creative and challenging ourselves and doing things that felt more like Star Wars.
Well, my favorite's the one with the droids.
Oh, when they're out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Oh my God, really?
It's THX White Limbo in Star Wars land.
George Lucas' favorite episode of the Clone Wars is a story that is not exclusive to Star Wars, something that is relatable. Dave Filoni's favorite episodes of Star Wars are that are just exclusive to the universe in itself. What that means is George Lucas tells a story that an audience can understand, whereas Dave Filoni doesn't have a lesson to be learned or a general theme to life. It's stuff that's exclusive to the Star Wars universe. I can't relate to being in a Mandalorian warrior society, or I can't relate to how Luke is as experienced in lightsaber swings affects me personally.
He knows much more than me. I've written 4 of these movies, but he knows more detail.
I'm definitely the bigger Star Wars nerd, I would say. A sort of a wider frame of knowledge for the canon and the extended universe.
This generation of Star Wars filmmakers have fallen in love with the universe, and they want to escape into it and expand upon it. The difference is that writers like Lawrence Kasdan, I hope I said his name right, don't escape into Star Wars, but use Star Wars as a medium to tell a relatable story.
How do you try to live an honorable life when the attractions of success or of material gain are very strong?
This is where I have to come around and talk about recent series that have come out, like The Bad Batch, where I personally enjoy The Bad Batch and love that it retcons some of the sequels and expands upon the lore. There's exciting moments that give you the most bang for your buck. However, there is no overarching theme. There is nothing that is relatable storytelling. And I can't believe I'm speaking for the general audience now, but the story is exclusively in the Star Wars universe and told just for hardcore Star Wars fans to catch it. It's not something I can recommend to a lot of people. Viewing it unbiasedly, I feel like it's a 6 out of 10 because there is none of those overarching themes. And The Bad Batch isn't the only place where I feel this way. Same goes with The Mandalorian. The first season was great because it was a Western, because it was a man trying to find purpose, and a kid comes along and starts to give him purpose to his life. There are elements to that story that we as the audience can understand and take part of our own lives and project it onto The Mandalorian. But when it goes further on and the seasons divulge into Mandalorian culture, that is where we're more into the Star Wars mythos and not into the mythos of man itself. And even though The Mandalorian does dive into Star Wars politics and is very historical, relevant to our own history, none of it feels actually relatable. Tony Gilroy wrote for Rogue One and Andor, and he was unafraid to make the tough choices. His superpower, as he called it, was that he wasn't a lifelong Star Wars fan, allowing him to take some big swings, such as sacrificing Rogue One's main characters. And I agree with him. He's not too busy getting muddled into the details or nerding out over all the little things that need to be noticed in the lore source material. He is spending time telling a good story and seeing what parts of Star Wars he can extrapolate to tell that good story. And that's because a good story will always override source material.
Well, when I did Star Wars, I consciously set about to recreate myths
and the classic mythological motifs. And I wanted to use those motifs to deal with issues that existed today.
Hey guys, sorry, I've been a little bit under the weather, so my voice probably sounds a bit off. Last year, for May the 4th, I made a video about Solo and the underrated parts of Star Wars, and this year I wanted to be a little more critical, so this is my Return of the Sixth video. I hope you guys like it. Subscribe to get more stuff like this, for more reviews or more Star Wars content, video games, and all the such. And until next time, play nice.